I am going to call our meeting of our board together. It is great to see everybody down here in St. George, thanks to all who had short commutes, those who had longer commutes. It's nice that we got to switch roles. I appreciate that everyone made it down to spend some time together. We unfortunately are going to start our meeting with a bit of sad news. We've just received word that Mayor Mike Minert from Garden City passed away yesterday. He had been battling stomach cancer. So I'd like to ask if we could just observe a moment of silence for Mayor Mike and for his family and for his. Any thoughts you want to share about Mayor Mike?
Yeah, for those of you who didn't know Mayor Mike, he was a force of nature. Peterson is from Northern Utah. He was on the league board prior to Mayor Peterson representing Northern Utah. He was also our town representative. He had a couple of terms representing Garden City, and Mayor Mike from Garden City represented Northern Utah on the board. He also represented towns on the board. He served several times on our nominations committee, and I saw him several times during legislative session. So, Bradshaw referenced the last battle with cancer. He's actually diagnosed during the session, and I didn't know. In fact, the public didn't really know until just in the last few days. He was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of stomach cancer, but didn't want it to interfere with how he was serving his community, and so that treatment's done, and ultimately passed away last night. But you can't go anywhere in Garden City without feeling his influence and seeing his fingerprints all over that place. And again, as I'm during sessions, he was at the Capitol advocating for Garden City and advocating for smart tourism policies, and he was involved in everything from short-term rentals to new playgrounds and pickleball courts and harbors and other things in Garden City. So, bit of a shock, a big shock, and great man, great advocate, and Mayor Mike will be missed.
Sorry, as we talk a little quieter each time, we don't pick up as much because the mic's all the way over here. So just folks, at least at that table, if you can, just try and talk into that mic I just turned on right there. I think that'll come through up here and that should help.
Okay,
Thank
we'll
you.
talk at it. On my drive down, I was thinking about the tradition of would you rathers. And I did drive down. I did not bike down. Did you bike down? Ever?
You did?
When did you start your ride?
Wednesday.
We're glad that you safely made it.
Don't know where it was going.
I know it was driving. I was going on the way drive down, so I was doing all of the days. But I was thinking about the fact that we needed one, and I had not sent one to the staff to prepare it as a slide-out poll. So hopefully you'll forgive that you don't need to do a slide-out poll. I thought we could just do it by raising hands. So, would you rather be in St. George here, or would you rather be meeting in the league boardroom in Salt Lake? Okay, so if you'd rather be meeting down here, please raise your hand. Okay. Anyone that would like to be meeting in Salt Lake today? I will allow you to explain why you'd rather be in Salt Lake.
Well, I'm here all the time. I stay in Georgia at least once a week, sometimes 4 times a week like this week. But my grandkids are in Salt Lake. So if I run Salt Lake, I have to fix it.
Councilmember Dugan, can you help facilitate that more often?
I'll get her some blessings.
All right, thank you for indulging my love of would you rather. With that, we can move on to the rest of our regular agenda. Hopefully everyone had an opportunity to read and review minutes from our last two board meetings, both January and March. And you've all had a chance to digest them and study them.
Approve the minutes.
Motion, Councilman Dugan, do we have a second? All in favor of voting to approve both our January and March board minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Looks like we've managed to approve this, thank you. Just as a reminder, we always have our annual conflict of interest opportunity. If anyone has a conflict of interest to declare, now is your moment. Seeing no conflicts of interest declared, we will move on to item number 3, which is our Q3 budget report and check register. Nick, do you want to take that away? And do you want the microphone?
Well, I'm trying to figure out, I'm not seeing anything pop up. I was seeing little green coming up on the audio, so I just asked Carson to step out and join and see if he's hearing anything. We do have some members of the public attending, but they're not able to participate in. So I would, if panelists were attending, they could be able to say, hey, I can't hear you. So Carson is in right now. So we're just seeing for a second if we actually have a recording going, which is required of us. So
That's okay, we can continue to stop for a minute, I can keep it up.
as long as you're speaking. Oh, Carson says I can't hear you. So we will ignore the fact that I'm not seeing any green bars popping on audio, and we'll head into the Q3 budget report. Okay, so this is all included in your packet. This covers the first 75% of our fiscal year, July 1st through 2025 through March 31st. As you're aware, we've gone through these budget reports before. We tend to look at our budget in kind of two sections. We've got our core budget, which is funded by dues and our regular general revenue, as well as unrestricted reserves. And then we have the portion of the budget that's funded by either state funding or our restricted reserves for this particular fiscal year, like LAA. Overall, at the end of this period, the league's collected close to 79% of the total revenue budgeted for the year, that being 99.3% of the general revenue. 70% of our annual general revenue derives from membership dues. That is 64% of our core budget, and those are 99.9% collected at the end of Q3. Sponsorship / donation is 10% of our revenue, and we are just over what we expect to collect for the year at 101.2%. Registration fees are 13.5% of general revenue, and we've collected 88.9% of that. We have, at the end of March, we have collected more as more people have registered for this mid-year. However, we did have less than expected revenue in registration fees for our annual convention, so we don't expect at the end of the year to hit 100%. However, the expenses have also gone down, so we're not too worried about that. And in addition, exhibit space revenue is higher than we've expected at 105% of our budget. As you recall, when you passed this budget, we've included 293,000 worth of unrestricted reserves to fund some one-time projects for this year. The reason for that inclusion is our policy of having our unrestricted reserve funds be at between 25 and 50% of the previous year's annual budget. We were just over that, so we're using that $293,000 to knock us down a little farther. And if we were to spend every dime that is budgeted this year, that would put us at about 48% next year.
One thing just to add to what Nick said about the one-time projects, you're going to see some of those one-time projects here in about 20 minutes.
Yes, yes indeed. We also had the LAA state appropriation that was not included in last year's legislative session. It had ongoing funding has been approved in 2026, but for this fiscal year, we've used some of the restricted reserves that we had left over to fund that program for this year. Additional state-funded technical assistance, and this will be part of the discussion that we'll have in the operations portion of the small group discussion. Additional state-funded technical assistance for this year includes the Office of Data Privacy with a $50,000 grant to be used in the first half of the year. At our Q2 budget report, we had concluded that, so the numbers are the same there. We've also received a 2-year grant from the Department of Workforce Services to help with subdivision help and mapping in certain areas. We received $189,000 up front to help pay for that. Most of that grant will be on a reimbursement basis. We've budgeted in this year because we didn't know how that would shake out the full $700,000 of that grant. However, they've allowed us to have it be a 2-year grant, so we won't see the full $700,000 in revenue. That will trickle out over the next 3 actual years. Overall, in our expenditures, we are at 58.7% of the total budget, with 75% of the year gone by. Another good comparison, because that $700,000 kind of throws us off there. We are 75% of the year has gone by, and we have spent 74.4% of actual revenue taken in. So we're on pace right there. Expenditures for personnel services are just over half of our core budget. And so far, ULCT has spent 72.6% of that budget. And I'm sorry, that's a typo. That should be 61%, not 51%. You'll see that in the graph down here later. So it's closer to 2/3 of our budget than half. Operating program expenses are just under 17% of our budget, and we have spent 61% of that this year. Events make up about 1/4 of our budget, and we spent just under 70% in that category. Grants and special projects account for roughly 7% of our core budget and are just under 1/4 spent at the end of Q2. One of the projects that you will see later on in this meeting, we had not had, it's going to be about $82,000 worth of spending, none of which had happened in the first 3 quarters. So we do expect that to catch up, eating away at some of those reserves that we budgeted for this year. And then finally, state-funded technical assistance accounts for 19% of the total budget, which is not in this core budget that we've been referencing before, and are just over 1/4 expended in the first half of the year. So that concludes what our typical budget reports have been for both Q1 and Q2 that we've given to you before. Now, as we prepare in our next meeting, we're going to be presenting to you a tentative budget, and we'll enter into the full-on FY 2027 budgeting process. So we wanted to give you just a little bit more context of what our general and core budget looks like this year and what we'll be looking at going forward. And we'll discuss a little more of that in our small breakout groups. Below, you have a snapshot of our core, or excuse me, it is 51%. My correction earlier saying it was 61 was incorrect. It is 51% for personnel services. In January, you adopted dues rates that would produce $2.782 million in dues revenue if we have 100% membership and including the newly incorporated communities. If you were to apply that, then we also have this year's core budget revenue and expenses, so you can kind of get an idea of what dues we apply it onto the previous year. The 2027 dues, if you apply it to this year, where kind of like our discretionary amounts of both revenue and expenditure are. Core revenue, 64% membership dues. You have a board objective that says we need to shoot for our dues to cover 95% of our personnel and non-conference operational expenses. And as you can see here, you've got 64% coming from membership dues. And then if you look at personnel expenses, as well as operations and engagement, that's 68%. That shakes out to be it's 94 point something percent. So you're really on for your goal right there. In event revenue, we see about 13% of our event revenue comes from what we're calling corporate event revenue. So that includes our sponsorship program and our exhibitors, with another 12% coming from registration fees. And look at that, 25% of our expenditures are our event expenditures. So those two are tied there, and that's why we have the colors kind of matching.
Nick, can I just jump in here real quick? When Nick and I took over, Nick as Chief Financial Officer and me as Director, we did not have that symmetry in our event revenue versus event expenditure. We lost money on events. And it actually was a board strategic session, one of the first ones we did, where we had discussions with the board of what their priorities were around conferences. And this is a simple illustration, but an important one. The board made it abundantly clear that they did not want to spend the amount of money we've been spending historically on entertainment at conferences. So we cut those really large, big ticket items from conferences. We also formalized sponsorship programs. Katie Hartley manages that for us. And we have more sponsors today than we've ever had. In fact, we have even more sponsors at this conference than we had 6 months ago, because she recruited a couple more sponsors, and they'll pay a higher rate than the exhibitors. They get different benefits, but she's done a phenomenal job with that program. And so now you can see we actually make more money off of sponsors and exhibitors at our conferences than we do from the registration fees. That's an important thing to keep in mind when we get to our small group discussion later, because of the uncertainty around the Salt Palace and what we need to do for the annual convention going forward. Is having an exhibit hall at both conferences generates a lot of revenue, and then has helped us keep registration rates, registration costs really flat for attendees, while still having, we're 600 or 596 as of Friday. Have we crossed 600 yet? She's in the register. Well, I'm hoping we get 4 more people.
I can look it up in the meantime.
We've only gone over 600 registrants for the mid-year conference once. That was 2 years ago. So gives you a sense of how successful the conferences have become. It's been a team effort to get us there, but we wanted you to see how these dollars fit together. Go ahead.
Okay, you can also see on the graphs, as Cam mentioned, yes, that is how our event revenue looks. Revenue-wise, you'll see a 1% is that indirect cost rate that we apply to state grants. So yes, our state-funded technical assistance is outside of our core budget, except for the 10% of the revenue that 10% charge on the revenue we collect from them helps fund our core budget, which ends up being 1% of our core budget. And then this year, 7% of our core budget is funded through those unrestricted reserves that we're using. Grants and special projects make up 7% of our spending. And as Cam mentioned before, a lot of those grants and special projects this year are being funded by that one-time revenue. We'll just kind of keep this graph in mind as we talk about in our small group discussions about the revenue portion of everything. Ultimately, 3/4 of the way through FY 2026, the league is $1,038,698 revenue over expenses, and the finances are in good shape. At this time, staff would ask the board to approve both the Q3 budget report and the Q3 check register that is also attached in your packet. If you have any questions about the specific expenses within that check register, we are happy to answer those at this time.
I think we have a question over here. Motion from.
Motion to approve the budget and the check register.
We have a second from Councilmember Dugan. We didn't ask if anyone had any questions. Now I'll just ask there anyone who'd like to raise or questions about the motion. Seeing none, all in favor of approving the budget report and the Q3 check register, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Looks like you have yourself an approved budget and check register.
Excellent, thank you.
You also have our next item, which is the annual progress assessment.
Yes, indeed. You should all be familiar with this. We've done it a number of times in our meetings, and you need to do it for your cities as well. But this is the annual fraud risk assessment that the auditor's office asks us to complete. We have filled this out along with our financial oversight consultant, Dave Sanderson. And this tells you all of the steps that we take to limit our exposure for the potential for fraud. As you can see, we score a 375 out of 395. That is in the very low level. This is unchanged as of last year, except in this basic separation of duties portion. I'm trying to see which one it is that we changed. We used to have a mitigating factor on the access to blank checks for some reason, but Cam does not have access to those, and neither does Mayor Hales, who are signers, so we switched that over to yes. But as far as the scoring goes, unchanged as of last year. So Cam and I have both signed that, and we're ready to go. We just need the board to adopt that, and we will submit it to the auditor's office.
Any questions or anyone ready?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mayor Van Wagner. And who's second?
Second.
Cory?
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. There we go. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Looks like we have
Very low, yes.
Next is, we have a public policy update, and Roger is here.
Great, yep.
Roger, and tag team on this one?
Yes, indeed. This is a very simple change to our internal policies and procedures. As the policies and procedures you adopted, I believe this one was in September of 2025. Or excuse me, 2024. Budget adoption is a portion of those policies, and within it, we talk about the procedure we have to follow in doing our budgeting. One thing we've left out of there is establishing any procedural rules for the only public hearing we have every year, which is our budget hearing. So we've simply added in here that at notice and setting the date of a public hearing on the budget, at the meeting at which the tentative budget is provided to the board, so our May meeting, the board shall establish the time, place, and procedural rules to conduct a public hearing to consider the budget's final adoption. A public notice of the hearing at least 7 days before the day of the hearing on the Utah Public Notice website and ULCT website. If you recall last year when we did the budget, for the first time under these rules, we had to do a number of motions, which included, we are setting the date and time. We are adopting the tentative budget. This is going to add one more in here where we adopt procedural rules for the public hearing, which I'm sure you have in many of your cities will be time is limited to 3 minutes, can also submit written comment, etc. We'll bring a copy of those rules to the meeting in May. That way we don't have those particular rules set in stone and anytime we need to update it, we have to go and update our policies and procedures. It will just be a part of the process every year in our budgeting process to establish those procedures.
But essentially, we realized we thought we've got a bit of a hole here. We had never already talked about what order the processes for the only budget hearing we had. So this is an approach of saying at the same time you adopt those, we'll adopt these rules. And then I suggested an approach to take, which is 3-minute public comment, and you can submit any written submissions you want to. So anyway, we're trying to fill a hole in anticipation of something that might happen.
That's good, because we want to get a hold of the budget.
Any questions from anyone about the suggested changes?
I think 3 completely arbitrary. But you're going to basically make that decision when we set everything in May.
And if that's with the draft that we bring to you in May, we can go any time frame that we think of.
Just to be clear, we're in our April meeting, we're allowing ourselves via our rules to have procedures in place. The procedures, then we'll have that finer detailed discussion in May.
What you're adopting now is to change the budget procedure back. That's what you're going to have procedures.
Okay, so in May, we expect a robust discussion between 2 minutes and a minute.
That's right, absolutely.
Per speaker. So that's not on the table for today. Today, what's on the table is just the language and preface that we have, so.
So we have some procedures.
Anyone else have any questions?
No, let's proceed.
And in that case, we have a motion to adopt this new language.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. We have motions all over.
I'll second.
I hope we're right, yes. All in favor of adopting Ayes, budget, budget language. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then everyone be thinking about what you think is an appropriate public comment window for meeting discussion. I'm sure everyone sitting has a good time for we use this guys. Next is our engagement update. Molly, you want the microphone? Sure. Hello.
Thanks for joining us in St. George. First part of our engagement update is our mid-year conference, which is happening right now in St. George. We, as Cam mentioned, we have about 600 people signed up. We're really looking forward to it. We have our first pre-conference programming that we've ever tried happening now with Danya Ramori running the competence. That seems to be going well, so it was a fun thing for us to try out. Additionally, we are going to have keynote speaker Professor Greg Jackson. He's a professor at UVU and has a great podcast called History That Doesn't Suck, as well as a book titled We've Been Here Before, that talks about kind of different periods of kind of conflict throughout American history and how we've worked through it and grown as a country. So we're excited to hear from him. A few other things I will point out. Nick, can we pull up that America 250 slide?
Yes.
So we have Greg speaking as a part of America 250. We're also going to have some America 250 programming on the main stage. One thing that we will have in the exhibit hall that we're pretty excited about, and we have to give big kudos to Cassidy and Carson, is we're going to have a What America Means to Me booth. And we're going to be asking folks different questions about American values and things like that that are significant to them, whether it's freedom of religion or freedom of speech or, individualism, you name it, you think of it. Actually, do name it and think of it by scanning this QR code and telling us so that we have some good things to fill this out. So it'll be a pretty interactive exhibit. We're pretty excited for it. So if you could help us kick things off by telling us what America means to you, it would be very helpful.
We're going to have a slide out, but it's a
It is a culture. Keep you on your toes. Not St. George, things are a little different.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
How come there's not a resort conference?
Great question. So this year, because we are focusing on water, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, we had limited time spots and we felt it was pretty important to have a Southern Utah caucus with some of their unique water challenges. And in our kind of look on things, a lot of the resort caucus issues on water as a topic could fall into other communities. And so that is why this one time we're not, just pick another caucus.
You can come down.
Goldilocks.
Let's talk about watershed.
Maybe don't say that to another
Wow.
That's such an incredible brag. Like, good on you. One other thing I will point out that is also a little different about this year, we're going to have a women in local government networking session rather than a whole standalone lunch. We would really appreciate it if our lady members of the board could prioritize attending that, just to make sure that we have good showing and support for that programming. It would be very much appreciated. Additionally, I think next item on the agenda is property tax. Am I right? The actual agenda in front of me. Pardon me, an annual report. So you will see in front of you our AEO report, or our annual report, where we go through highlights of our advocacy, engagement, and operations, and everything we have accomplished in the last year, as well as a nice board shout out in there. So go find yourselves in your communities. If you have any questions about it, let us know. Cam, is there anything in particular you want to highlight in there? Kate's message, pardon me. Kate also wrote a really outstanding message. I'm sorry. Also, Mayor Bradshaw wrote a really outstanding message. My bad. Additionally, we are pretty excited. We've been working hard on a property tax video series that we will formally unveil tomorrow in the main stage. But one thing that we really realized this session as we kept having property tax discussions was it became very clear that there is not a lot of understanding as to how property tax works in general. That's amongst the general public, it's amongst the legislators, it's amongst some of our own, municipal officials. And so one thing we really realized this session is it almost doesn't matter what policies the legislature imposes in a sense, because if the public doesn't understand what's happening, the angst isn't really going to be resolved with different procedures. And so what we have implemented, we're doing 10 minutes of kind of short video series targeted at the general public to educate them about what property tax is, what it does, specifically with the lens of what it does through municipal government. And so our goal is that we will get these to you and your communities, and you can share them with the public. And then if you're going through truth in taxation or anything like that, you can use this as a building block to tell your story. And then hopefully people will understand what property tax is, why they pay it, how it's calculated. And so that when you go through truth in taxation or your budget conversations, that baseline understanding is there. So I think we wanted to show the third video as an example. I get them.
That was good.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll have a handful of those videos going through just the basics of property tax as well as truth in taxation. And then we're also working with the tax commission on more resources specifically targeted for municipalities on property tax as well. So stuff for you all and then stuff for your residents as well. And then I think the final thing on the list is the mitigation task force. Correctly? Perfect. So HB 596 during session would have created a homeless shelter city mitigation task force to really dive into mitigation contributions and distributions and try to come up with a better policy so that we didn't have to crack open the code every few years and tweak things. That bill did not pass. However, we got a lot of feedback from a lot of folks who felt like it was pretty important to do this. And so we would like to run that task force with OHS. We've been working with Tyler Clancy, who's the new state homeless coordinator, and will also be here tomorrow for a workshop. So the proposal that we have worked on with OHS and is based on the legislation is a mix of municipal and state leaders, since there are state dollars in the mitigation fund. So it would have 9 voting members. One would be Tyler Clancy as the state homelessness coordinator or his designee. Then there would be 2 members from the state homeless board. Then there would be 3 municipal officials that represent shelter cities that are recommended by the Shelter Cities group, but selected by the ULCT board, and then 3 non-shelter city representatives that are, again, selected by the ULCT board. We want to make sure that we are keeping an eye on a good mix of having folks from across the state, potentially, elected officials, administrative officials, things of that sort. So we wanted to just run this model by the board and make sure we had your buy-in on that. And then our goal would be to solicit interest over the next month, and then at the May board meeting, have you vote on who the municipal members of that task force would be.
Hey, this is a, big and significant.
So no elected officials?
No, there would be elected officials, but I think we just want to be flexible, right? Like if there is an outstanding police chief who really understands this, and you're like, we actually would love to have our chief on this, or we'd love to have our finance director or city manager. Or if it's, we really want the mayor, we want to have just the flexibility to have the board say, we think these are the best people, and it could be a mix.
So just as a reminder, this was a provision in the last few days of the session when we passed this bill twice, but we didn't do that was one of my favorite parts of the session. The court intern who we looked at said, it goes in this bill. And the intern went and said, it goes in that bill. And it was in both bills. But this provision came out, but was something that was a handshake in the hallway that we will make sure this happens, that this is important for all cities, whether you're hosting a shelter or whether you're paying the mitigation fund, that this was an important discussion we need to have. So, it looked like Councilor Dugan, you had a question.
Yeah, I just had a question about the membership side of the house, and that layout is good. Maybe on the non-voting side, so the homeless problem is the bigger cities areas has a bigger problem because they have a bigger population, they have a lot of services. There's rural Utah that probably has a lot of people that are also probably on that unsheltered or, couch surfing level that doesn't get seen much because it's so, it's a small population. So if there's opportunity to maybe have a non-voting member or someone with a voice from the areas that are in the small rural areas on that membership, just so that they can get probably their perspective. There may be some services that we can provide them that aren't something as a resource center like we have, like the Gale Resource Center, in a bed, but with a smaller center with 20 beds or something like that. Just get their perspective on that, and I'm not just throwing that out because there's that's our state is rural, and we have lots of small pockets that could possibly use some help in mitigating those problems in those areas.
So just so you're clear, the task force duties are on the back page.
Yeah.
And while I'm confident that Molly can and this group can meet and do all kinds of really broad work in homelessness, I think that the group's focus is a little bit narrow. It's the mitigation fund and what things are appropriate costs. How do you apply? How do you count beds? We all need to count beds in the same ways. We all need to count for the public safety aspects in the same ways. And right now, sometimes we're not doing those things. So the duties are a little bit narrower. Some of those broader things I think fall to the broader homeless services.
And I would also suggest, I think, to your point, it's a good one, and that's why I was trying to note that we could, this group, if that's important for this group, you have the 3 voting members, and I think if you're going to have a mind to include rural, it would be important to include the non-voting member. And so whether they're a non-shelter city or one of our smaller shelter cities, I think if you could make that decision to say that's how we want to prioritize one of these vote holders as well.
Right.
Molly, do you happen to, on the top of your head, all the people that are members of the Homeless Services Board, so you can rattle off who might be eligible to serve from that group?
Oh, I could, unfortunately, yeah. So the Homeless Services Board,
I thought you might.
so it is chaired by, Randy Shoveley. It has an executive group that includes Spence Eccles, Mary Mendenhall, and, Tyler Lindsay. The way that it is formulated, the board would have 2 appointments. There are 2 municipal officials on that board. I can't see the board picking either of the municipal officials, so that would be, Mayor Sherry Wood of South Salt Lake, as well as, Mayor Mendenhall. So I think if it's important, and I think that would also be helpful just for the balance of the group, not to have, the shelter cities overrepresented kind of through another avenue, but we'll also see what the board does. Other members of the Homeless Services Board include Jen Campbell from the providers, Randy Grace from the counties, Mo Egan, who's with the other side of county and has the lived experience, Tiffany Price, who's been involved with the Salt Lake Business Community and Solutions Utah. Casey Cameron from the governor's office, and Josh Rowley is there in an advisory capacity for Shelter the Homeless, but he's not officially board member.
There's 5 voting members, right?
11 voting
members
on the state board.
So all of those people are eligible to be the 2.
Yes, all of those
that
people are
they select.
eligible to be the 2 as selected by the chair. I have a thought on who I would suspect the chair would go forward. It's probably better for the chair.
I'm still going to ask if you want to share that thought. Okay, we'll save that for later. So the anticipation is that we will we'll be discussing this and submitting names for next month, or?
Yeah, so we would collect names over the next month of those who are interested. We would need to convene the Shelter Cities group and get their names of who they'd like to put forward to represent them. And then we would bring kind of 2 slates of names before you. One of the folks who are interested from the Shelter Cities, one of the folks who are interested from the non-shelter cities, and this group would need to pick 3 of each.
So, Council, we're doing, obviously, Salt Lake has more experience than they would probably like in this category. But you shared some thoughts on perspective. Is there anyone else that has thoughts about, guidelines for what we have to be thinking about? We have to share this with, like our 3 shelter and 3 non-shelter as we meet next month.
Well, I was with the idea that we were, so I don't think it's a version. So then they're going to issue their certificate,
Any other thoughts? Okay. Molly, do you have anything that you'd like to circulate something to?
So what we'll probably do is just create a brief Qualtrics form, just to solicit interest, and from at least the non-shelter cities. I think it'll be fairly self-contained for the shelter cities, since we'll need to run that through their group first. So if there's any, if you have any, questions or anything you'd particularly like to know from people who are interested, we can certainly put in a short question or 2. I don't want to make it too onerous of an application necessarily, but if you would like anything kind of beyond name, position, community, let me know and we can make sure we incorporate that to give you the information that you feel like you need to make an informed choice.
Wouldn't we just ask for the reason they would like to serve or why they think that they have background or perspective or qualifications?
Great question.
Is this annual, would it be used annually? Is it done, say, any time
This is kind of a one-time to
Yeah, so the
take
goal-
recommendations back to the legislature.
One time to register, legislators.
Yeah, so you'll be reporting our findings back to the Homeless Services Board, the shelter supervisory board. And then in theory, this will probably work its way into the 2027 session, annual homelessness bill.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean we could never revisit it, but it is kind of the goal to, every couple of years, we kind of like have to crack this open and have this big discussion. And so I think it's trying to figure out how do you make a system that can just kind of run and that like grow or shrink accordingly and just be tailored rather than having to completely rewrite code when another city becomes a shelter city or if more housing comes online.
Any additional questions or thoughts? I'll let you know what you need.
If you have anything else, any other thoughts, feel free to let me know and we'll get working on it. Thank you.
Next is our advocacy update by Jerry T. Should be done by
Before we get to Jared, I just want to add one last piece on property tax videos. We told you during the budget piece that you would see the fruits of the labors of using those one-time reserves, and that's what's paying for those property tax videos. Molly, how many will there be when it's all said and done?
It's a good question. We have 10 minutes, but a few of them are longer than a minute, so probably 6 to 7 videos total.
Yep. So 10 total minutes of video broken up into 6 or 7 pieces. So Mayor Walker leaned over to me after he watched that and said, well, are we answering this question? And we don't get additional property tax even when property values go up. Yes, that is one of the pieces that will be in the video. So the feedback you gave us last month is all being incorporated into this video series. 3 are done now. The rest will be done in the next couple of weeks. We anticipate a lot of taxing entities, many cities and towns will go through truth and taxation this year. So just be prepared for that. We expect a lot. And there'll be some state politics about that and local politics about that. We just, in Friday Facts this past Friday, put a link to the updated checklist from the Tax Commission that our team worked hand in glove with them on. So there was some frustration last year about the checklist. So I want to thank the Tax Commission publicly. They worked very closely with us over the last few weeks building out that checklist. And then we have some supplemental materials that Carrie and Frank Nakamura, Roger too, and others on the staff have worked on for the last few weeks. Alexa has turned into a property tax expert over the last few weeks. She's been proofreading every document that's been going back and forth to make sure all the details are correct. Then we'll have this video series, which is more for the public and broader than if you're going through truth and taxation or not, because it's more about property tax in general. For those of you who are going through truth and taxation, please use those resources and please stay in touch with us as we go into that process this summer. With that, Jared, let's keep talking about revenue and let's give an update on impact fees.
Let's see, I thought it was we occasionally, the league gets requests to participate in amicus, which is a brief in another case. And as in the past, we've received some of those. In fact, I think the last 2 or 3 board meetings, we've had requests come in. We have another request come in from Salt Lake City, and this one deals with impact fees. The issue that is involved in the case is, should a city that collects impact fee under one impact fee facilities plan be able to spend those impact fees on system improvements that were only identified in a later adopted impact fee facilities plan? That is the issue. I won't get into the case and all of that. We have provided you with those documents in the board agenda, and it is a lot of pages. So I won't go into that, but one thing that you as a board need to consider in whether or not to participate in this amicus brief, and that may be just signing on to an amicus brief. It may be intervening as a party. It could be a number of things. But what the board needs to consider in each amicus request that comes in is various factors, which include how broad and widespread this issue is, and whether it affects or will affect all cities or most cities, or is it just an isolated issue? The uniqueness of the issue, the likelihood that the league's position would be supported by the court, bandwidth that's being provided, the facts of the case, those types of things. And so we have provided those materials for you, and I don't think that we're expecting any sort of decision today, but this gives you to be able to move forward, be able to read this, go through this, and decide as a board whether to either move forward with this amicus or choose to not move forward with it.
We'll have to make that decision.
Yes.
We just have to.
We have to make the decision to make because the brief is due in June. So. Yes. So the question is, what is the cost impact to the league? And right now, we have been told that that UAC, as well as a few other entities, will likely be drafting an amicus brief that the league could choose to sign on to, like we did with the last amicus request that came in. We merely just had a paragraph that said we agree. It's more complicated, but essentially that we agree and signing it. So it could be as simple as that. It could also be a little bit more where the league staff or another attorney that we go out and through UMAA, we solicit those drafting of the amicus. So it could be nothing, and it could be a lot more, depending on what we do and how whether we just sign on to the amicus brief or whether we want to draft the brief and have attorneys draft the brief.
You have a recommendation for something?
Yes, since it's already being drafted by UAC and others, my recommendation would be just to sign on to that amicus brief. Now, that being said, I don't know what is in that amicus brief and what their position will be. So we will know that. I don't know when we'll know that, when that amicus brief will get done, and that you'll have access to that. What we need today is, to start the official process and get those documents to you.
Any additional questions for him?
This is an additional point, Phil. Thank you very much for bringing this up. Of course, Salt Lake City is one in front, but this affects us all across the board, and be any one of us being in our position at the same time, and we would be supporting you at the same time because so broadly and change because of different things.
I think the position you've outlined is a good one. I think having the possibility of signing on is good and perhaps the easiest approach. I don't mean that in a negative way, but like if somebody drafts one and we like it, I think signing our name to it is certainly an easy way to do it and makes perfect sense. I think it's probably wise for us to consider something more, and I don't know what that is yet. I think it would be wise to see what is said, read it, and see if it goes the direction or is far enough or down the direction we want to go, or if there's an additional angle that we could take. This actually is a very important important issue. And it is, impact fees are extremely important for the development of all of the utility operations of our cities. And to lose the ability to be, I think, nimble and updating of our impact fees contradicts, I think, the value of impact fees. We need to update these things all the time. So I think this is a good approach, and I think this is perhaps maybe just the starting point, that maybe there's another step we need to take, and we need to be open to that, depending on how that comes out.
I just would echo this, unless there's anything that's a substantive change based on what we've read, I totally agree with what you said about.
There an additional thought around this item? Butter.
But I got mixed feelings on this case. The broader principle on total agreement is an important issue, but I think you have to analyze each case on its fact patterns. Well, I think we clear it up and go forward with what's involved in this. If it's just signing on to a brief that's prepared by somebody else and that's it, that's fine. I worry a little bit about, and I say that I'm really mixed on this issue because I think, Mr. McCaffrey said, et cetera, but I think we've got to be careful about making sure we understand the full fact counts in each case. How much of it's discretionary action of the city, how much is involved in other issues before we pass the final decision. So, and I wasn't the only one that had those concerns. But the broader issue on the total agreement was I just sort of throw that caution so me and others raise that same question.
And we'll know more once we receive that amicus brief.
How long do you think you'll have before it's due, and how much time?
I have no way of knowing that until we get it.
Like, what we can sign this the day before?
Process-wise, the process-wise, for those who are new on the board, you need to affirmatively tell us, yes, start the process, let's get started on it, then we'll prioritize it internally accordingly, and then come back to you for final approval before we sign off, which is, again, based on the timing it's likely to be. So that's what we need today is final approval. Jared said there's lots of documents in here that we invite you to share with your city staff. If you have follow-up questions, you can reach out to Jared. We'll do a lot of work over the next month if you approve of us starting the process.
Impact fees is all like property tax, there's a lot of confusion around it, and this might be a good opportunity to bring some light to how impact fees work.
Well, light is coming on impact fees. That was perfect, perfect segue. Justin?
Yep, okay.
You're literally right behind me. I can't turn around that far. Can you take 30 seconds and just reference the legislative audit on impact fees? Because that's part of the context.
Yeah, this is part of the, what's that? 15 seconds? There's an impact fee audit coming from the Office of Legislative Research. No, there's an audit being done right now by the Office of Legislative Auditor General. Now, this is important. The Office of Legislative Auditor General is different than the state auditor. These auditors work for the legislature. They've done a lot of audits over the past few years. We've worked with them on a few audits around housing, around water exactions, things. The legislative auditors are generally very fair in their audits. They work with us closely. They take feedback from us. They reach out to cities in a good way. And they find things that we don't always agree with, and they make findings that we don't necessarily agree with, but they do a fair job, and they do a good job looking at things. We had some meetings with them during the session to start out this audit, but they're going to be looking at impact fees throughout the year, and they're going to look at how they're used, which means they will be reaching out to cities at some point. When we asked a question to the city managers earlier today, no one's hand in the room went up yet that they've been reached out to, but we know they are going to be reaching out to cities and finding out how impact fees are being used. So between the court case, between the audit, there are going to be many moving pieces with impact fees over this next year. And no question that whatever comes out of the court case and whatever comes out of the audit, there will be recommendations made that the legislature will try to tackle and make some changes on. So this is not just a one-off should we weigh in on, in a court case, it's not just a one-off on the audit. This is going to be a larger conversation. The legislators are going to want to tackle. We had at least three, I can't think more than that, but three different pieces of legislation dealing with impact fees this last session. We were able to get them all either bumped to next year with the idea that we work with legislators with them during the interim, or they kind of died under their own weight. But it is something on legislators' minds, obviously something on developers' minds as we have court cases and legislative auditors looking at it now as well. So that was more than 30 seconds on all of that, but just want to create a bigger picture here that this is not a subject that's going to go quietly into the night. This is something that we're going to have to spend some time on, and we'll almost certainly have some battles on the next session.
The good news is the legislators will make it better.
Every day time.
But do we only want 24 hours to review and see what we want to sign on to? Or start doing something on our own proactive?
Jerry, what would it we need to consider from a use of your time and like budget the outside?
Great question. I think that it would be a fairly short amicus brief on our end. That's what I would anticipate. And so the legal fees and the staff time would be somewhat considerable, but I would feel a lot more comfortable for someone that writes amicus briefs on a regular basis or is involved in an appellate procedure to do that. And so if we're looking about writing our own brief, then I would recommend going out to outside counsel to do that. That means significant cost. So even if it's short.
Which we could do. Like right now, today is simply start the process, look at all the options over the next few weeks and come back with a recommendation.
Do you think it's likely the back will let you embed more deeply so you can get that
Yes.
comfort versus
Yep.
reacting?
Yeah.
Forward. Okay, do we feel like we've had enough discussion? Anyone have any additional questions? We've had enough discussion. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
We move forward with the amicus brief support.
Process?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilor Dugan and Council, second from Councilor Wagner. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none? It looks like you got a 4-month assignment. So much for your post-session break. All right, now we're to our board strategy session. Cameron, do you want to set up what you want us to do to create the groups?
Yep, I will. For those of you who are new, this is, in my mind, the most exciting board meeting we have all year. It's an opportunity for you to break into smaller groups and to have just some open discussions that give some general direction to us. And I want to thank particularly Nick Jarvis, Justin Lee, and Molly Wheeler, because they'll be the three facilitators. We have questions in each division: operations, advocacy, and engagement. And they've done a tremendous amount of work leading up to today and figuring out what exactly we want to discuss. The overarching theme really is prioritization. That's the framework here. Because our staff is fantastic, and despite their fantasticness, or maybe because of it, we get asked to do a lot by the members. So we are constantly in this tug of war of what do we prioritize and what are we unable to do. And so when we break into these strategic conversations each spring, it's to try to answer questions that have arisen during the year. I'm not going to go into the background. I'll leave that to Nick, Justin, and Molly. But we really want to hear from board members. And this is as much a reminder for me and our staff. This conversation is about board members. So lead staff is facilitating it. We'll be taking notes on it. We'll answer questions and keep the dialogue going. But it's really more about us hearing from you, not the other way around. But we will answer questions and keep the dialogue going. But we want to hear from you. This will help inform the tentative budget we're going to next month, as well as some other strategic things that are in front of us. And so please keep that focus on board members and the why of why we're doing all of these pieces. We have broken up into 3 different groups, and I mentioned we'll be keeping notes. So for purposes of minutes in the next meeting, we'll be able to come back and we'll summarize, here's what each group said. You're not making any decisions in those groups. It's just an open discussion in each of those groups, okay? So 3 groups of 6 people each, based on who is here in the room. We'll have about 20 minutes in each station. I'll be floating as the Weather League staffers, and we'll give you like a 10-minute notice, 5-minute notice, so that you can act accordingly. So we'll start with Mayor Bradshaw's group.
By the way, I love that he doesn't trust us to count ourselves off.
I have, in fact, if you look at my notes, it's identified based on different classes of cities, Wasatch Front, non-Wasatch Front, trying to make sure we've got
I like
good
it, I like
diversity.
it, just can't count ourselves, it's fine, it's fine.
We're in second grade if we could do it.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, my second year could
So, I don't know, would I pick last? I don't want to be.
Wait, second, no.
Last one is.
Someone has to be the last name written, that's all it is.
I will, you know what, yeah, I was gonna say it's alphabetical, but it's not.
Stop it, just move on.
And this is why you don't ask questions you don't want the answers. Okay, so Mayor Bradshaw's group will start here. They will start on the advocacy question with Justin. That'll be Mayor Bradshaw, Mayor Burton, Councilmember Egbert, Mayor Van Wagner, Mayor Mickey Wright, and Seth. Yes. You'll start there, right? That's Justin's group. Then over here, Councilmember Hinton's group, along with Mayor Walker, Councilmember Dugan, Councilmember Tolley, Mayor Shepherd, and Councilmember Goodrich. So
Team two.
You'll start over there with Nick. And then Wally will be back here, start on the engagement questions with Mayor Palmer, Mayor Wright, Mayor Peterson, Mayor Bruno, Mayor Lynch, and Councilmember Sean. So it's 3:16. We'll go about 20-ish minutes each, give time to rotate around. We'll take our chairs over there. And then,
Wait. We have to carry our chair to each station.
no, you leave the chairs. So Nick, Justin, and Wally, and the chairs stay. Hold on, before we break. We'll come back, that's why it's written down. We'll come back to the committee of the whole at the end, just to finish up the meeting. We're not going to do any sort of big summaries because we'll staff need time to review the notes, and we'll bring those back to you in future meetings. Are there any questions about the objectives? Nick, Molly, Justin, anything you guys want to add big picture before we break into the groups?
I have nothing to start us out.
Okay. You're right, Chuck?
No, let's.
Okay, let's go.
I hold my chair over here. These are some of these are like on the fly notes I'll be taking. While you're going, that'd be great.
It's also right
Wait a second. I don't know if that's other snacks.
That's not snacks.
Really? I had this discussion a week ago. She's like, do you want some snacks? I'm like, not a snack. Yeah, if you're in a garden, it's not a snack.
You have some,
I would love that is my standard snack. Okay, okay, this is an important question to start out. This is not quite a windy round. Are vegetables a snack? Yes, yes. Okay, but we have Mayor Walker joining us. So snacks have to have an ending as well. I try not to keep you great, well, thanks for joining us. We're going to get started. This is Kansas City Uniform. We're going to start off with operations.
what I had up.
So snack has to be either.
At the board agenda, we've got a total of 3 questions for you, broken up into 2 categories. The first of which is going to be our.
I want a new group. Your guys' definitions are wrong. I want a new group.
Who does not just serve on the nomination committee?
Welcome to group session. Is a vegetable snack.
Some are. You chair. Yeah. So you have experience in that role as well. Everyone's actually going through this.
Give a definition.
So I'll just read off exactly what we're putting in the back.
Stand for something or fall for everything.
Well, I'll go through bylaws that we generate. The nominations process all the last few years. Table changes.
Oh, man, we got eight more.
My group, process is consistent with our tested bylaws and the
All right, so
it's to accommodate large number of technologies, provide more time and information for committee deliberation, assign committee members outside the cities where board.
All right, we talked about a little bit in our last board meeting.
So to give a little more info on that, we used to, back in the day, everyone who applied was an in-person interview the day of the conference. Took up a huge chunk of time for them and those sitting on the committee. And since then, it took a bunch of time then. Since then, we've had more and more people applying to be on the board than we had spots.
We use the executive officers.
What we've shifted to then is using questionnaires that folks.
And not just because Kate is.
Giving all of that information to the nominations committee, and then the nomination committee ranks people, we look at where that ranking falls, and then we've done anywhere from 2/3 to half of the candidates being accepted for an interview, and then half to 1/3 being.
But the question is, based on ways that we can use the board.
And then 1 year we did in-person interviews with all those people that we've
got LTC, obviously, we had about 4 made it past the questionnaire, which is.
Then, we still even have more people joining. We have folks who don't want to miss use trucks or our stay. So, we even, more where we do virtual interviews.
We're getting to.
Not the day of the conference. And so that everyone gets a chance, everyone who made that list, it's a virtual interview. Longer interviews for second vice president, but still a virtual interview. And then the day of the conference is where we're meeting just on there. That was the last way we went about that. So you see that evolution of 3 very different ways of doing it, all consistent with bylaws we have established. Other than the changes we made to those bylaws that I can recall.
I'm not looking to ask the board to use that legitimately, like, I'm not saying like,
2 consecutive
we need
terms.
you to do something more.
That became a problem in certain board areas where we don't have as much participation.
Legitimately, what makes sense.
And a lot of spots, it's like people don't participate time, and we've had good board members from that area and saying, oh, makes no one else, let's just keep going. Now we have had folks, that have,
so that's kind of
been on the board for 2 to 3 terms, and the committee has asked,
with that,
do we need to look at some sort of term and that sort of thing, and I've explained to them, we used to
yes,
have
we can use the
that,
board,
more trouble than it's worth to have that sort of thing. The other change we made is it used to be very prescribed as to who sits on the nominations committee. It was like a member from each area, a member from each, certain classifications, first class in town, that sort of thing. In our overall constitution update that we did in 2018, we scrubbed that to say, make a committee with considerations of geographic and size diversity. And we've done a pretty good job of just making sure we've got that. We've also tested out, it's mostly a volunteer basis. It starts as a volunteer basis of people saying, hey, I'd like to serve on the committee. And then it's me going out and asking people if they'll serve on the committee because we haven't had enough people come on. We had run into the point before where someone is a nominee for the board and someone from their city or town says, hey, I'd like to serve on the committee. And that kind of gave us 2 conflicting things of, oh, well, we want to accept volunteers, but we also don't want to take staff. So at one point we said, okay, we'll say yeah, but we've got someone from the same area, so we'll try and get someone from their city to be on the board to try and balance that out a little. Now we've shifted to more of a, hey, if you've got someone on the nominations committee, we don't, or on, as a nominee, we don't want you on from the same city or town. So with all of that background, the question we want to ask you all is just to provide some feedback on the process, from your perspective as a nominee, as a committee member, or both, for those who have done so.
So I have to sit there and teach you. All you gotta do is, depend on these small cities, they're doing it on
Sounds to
Facebook.
me like you provide from your perspective that
We don't, okay, you can look at all that, we have discussions in front of you.
It's the best part of being on the executive committee, right? We started off hard, that it's the second vice president has to make all the say the notes.
Depending on.
Only doing the virtual.
Sucks for me.
I don't think I would like it. Part of me wants to try to do this. I love having it ahead of time. Here we are on the board, and I'm just like.
And that asks more time-wise of the committee, less condensed and less in person, but we can meet 3 times. We need to go through the survey results. So you, as a committee member, you've got to read everyone's questionnaires, and you've got to answer a survey on who you like the most based on those questionnaires. Then you got to meet and go through those results. Then you got to meet and interview virtually, and then you got to meet the day of. So what used to be 1 meeting is now 3. But honestly, the virtual nature of it makes it a lot easier than just like, okay, let's hammer down one thing.
And we have the option to do day after, like, questions are like cleared up. We didn't need that. But I am. Yeah, so,
I just like to see.
you know what, boy, he was. It was a simple solution, just have AI.
Throw it all in, see what pops up. Done and done. The hard part is session.
I'm sure you've got something like C level, so feels like every year they tweak it too.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts on that too.
I think it works well. You know, it came up one year while I was serving on the nominations committee. We didn't really have a person involved. And we kind of looked at that and said, well, should we have reached out to somebody else? Should we have added somebody else to the nomination we requested? And I just think that's the right thing to do. If somebody wants to be on the board, then they should apply to be on the board.
So that's kind of some of the feedback.
We should
Starting to
ask them to
ragged from the office. It's hard to then pull someone from that and think like, I will commit to my time.
And in that case, it was after the fact. It was well, here we are.
I also think
We interviewed them.
we got the expertise angle.
There were good people,
That requires more people to respond.
but it was tossed out that maybe we should do something.
Skills, we have a matrix.
It's a terrible idea.
We have a matrix that says Jennifer has expertise.
And that's where I personally like where our bylaws are out, where they're at, they provide us some guidelines. In that case, we have to be like, well, we have deadlines here, we have this, we have to.
Yeah, I think that's my rules in the city.
But they're not too rigid, we can be flexible and say, hey, why don't we do virtual meetings, why don't we try, break it out into 3 rather than that.
So you guys did the survey, you read about the survey, then you made a list,
You're ready, you're
then you virtually interviewed everybody on the list.
That's right.
Like they couldn't be there, so I thought it was helpful, like we
Yeah.
made that an option, fire rate reports your and sure.
I am so excited. Like, we have
And
been
they,
is that.
did you interview the same people again? Or-
We did not, we just.
No interviews. We had the option, no interviews day of in person, but we had the option that, and then the committee met after those interviews, and said, okay, is there anyone here we can do a second interview for? Are there some people that are same area, real close, or we ask them to interview in person? So that leaves that option there for it, and we tell nominees that there's an option for it. But everything we need, let's meet.
Yeah. Sometimes just over there, right? It's just live mess something, and it seems like it's.
So we elevate, yeah, so we're back.
No, I, from a staff perspective, I don't think there's a problem with it. I think we've been able, I guess the question is kind of like, do we need to formalize in bylaws? Are our bylaws flexible enough that we can continue to evolve along with them? We've also had folks who don't get on the board ask us, what is this process like? Like, how are you picking this? What are you doing? You know, we don't have people who got on the board really asking those questions, but people who don't get on the board sometimes are like, hey, I don't know how I feel about this process. So we wanted to be able to come to the board, talk through people who've gone through the process and served on it, to be like, is this fair? Is this legit? And I really do like having Mayor Shepherd's NLC perspective too, because, you know, we only know what we need to do.
Running around and it's a thing where like, teaching someone to say what you would have said takes you more time than it is doing it. And when time gets to a premium, they're at the end of the session, questions, they're like, yes, I can work this stuff, you can say, or I can get up and say it. And so having a way to get that to be able to do anything early.
NLC's board, I think, is not essential, stood up, you walked up and had.
So yeah, whether it's
Every take, make a presentation, and then you went and sat down. And then they went back and deliberated, and one time they signed, it was on your form that you had filled out, and your 3-minute piece. Now they've got that same.
Honestly, the person I will always defer to you on what's the option is it worth
It
having
works really well. I mean, it really does, because you can go back and forth.
somebody who can come up and say that,
I can sit there and
snippet, or are you
look at a video and go, okay.
and is it only good enough, like,
That match to their,
not
to their thing. Sure. And it's really just.
I think I would defer to you.
You've got written answers to questions that you've sent in, you got a 3-minute video,
Don't
you
need
explaining
to.
why you're yes.
Do you answer interview questions in the video, or you just what you want to?
You want to put together in that 3-minute video.
Okay.
And that's how they get to.
No, and it wouldn't be all the time.
But I think, I mean, going to the diversity of voices, I think that more, from a legislative perspective, it's not get up there testing, because it's not a fault. It's, again, you used to have that, and it's very short to fill out budget, you fill budget out, staff and some offices. Their case is always more than that. That said, the second vice president is interviewed. And it's an in-person interview, and that you're sitting around, there's some pressure for that, it's very different. And to me, that's crucial, because I think part of that second vice president is, can you stand in front of people at a leader meeting and make a presentation? And it is very different in Zoom sitting on your business up top. Party of honor.
We know you were in your So we're halfway?
No, I can say we've never done one, like, as a standalone video, that's a good idea. I think we've done things.
I feel like you guys-
And I think great things we've done that, but yes, we can do that really fast. Kate and I can still like another minutes right now.
I also, in favor of even though it's not Zoom. What I do if I spare 3 minutes, response, yeah. I think that's, something comes out at that point, even though it's Zoom, it's a little more comes out at that point. And I also like the idea.
I know everybody's there.
Person.
Sure.
They're in there elements that.
It's an important thing, and that's a good thing to remember, because I have, as staff, I can tell you, like, 100%, we have said that before, like,
Kind of like read the discussion.
like, you've talked to people before, but talking to legislators is different, because it's a different thing, you know, one of the players, the dynamic was different, and I think that's an important thing for us right now.
And to that point,
I would do it in person.
Your council meeting,
I thought that was
you're
very
as comfortable as can be.
enjoyed that.
Step into that legislative hearing.
I don't think splitting it up.
Yeah.
Because you're Salt Lake City, you're in person, but because you're from St. George, you've got the Zoom, I think it's a service by doing that.
To me, the
It's all
only
in person or all
is like, oh, don't screw up. At the same time.
Cam gave us the warning, if you guys have questions, let's read, we're halfway through. So, any just final thoughts on the nominations process in general? I think we're on track of what we've been doing. It's
My
continuing to
final
evolve.
thought would be.
The reason why I was there was.
Yeah, because unless you've applied.
If I knew what was going on before, I would be more than happy to say, hey, here's what's happening.
These are all the people that.
I am quite willing to come and help. When do I do that?
When did that come out? How did that? We should look at it.
Everybody knows Mayor was coming down the path and running away. You might have to step in.
Yeah. To explain, but I think some, like,
So I'm thinking about this operationalizing something like this.
And like,
I was
and
late
I think
fourth
would
quarter
encourage
planning.
participation, not that we have a problem with.
Yeah, I mean, in our, whatever, November,
candidates
December,
applying,
right?
or I think if we had just some video,
Well,
I'd
I'd say
like
two
remind,
weeks,
maybe we
yeah.
put that together.
Yeah, do we assign subject matters, or like, we know what's going to happen with this thing, we need people on this, or do we get two bills, so the second part? Once we have bill numbers out there, so like, our January board can be like, all right, so share those bills.
Show the committee like before and after.
You track.
I'd rather see us interview these than in person.
For second VP, yeah.
We know subject matters, yeah.
I think one of the issues is asking something is wrong with the process or just like
Most people, you know, it's kind of a squeaky wheel kind of issue, like, most people take it with grace, most people don't get in there for a second. Most board members have applied and been told, sorry, you know, maybe next time, and come back in. For the most part, it works, and people still participate with the league and still have work. Yeah, there is the occasional where it's like, I wanna know more about this process, why isn't this, the feeling that it may not be as open and transparent as.
That's a good word for me.
Yeah. So I do think explaining it to our membership a little better will really help with that.
Okay, great. That's the service for me.
Okay, moving on. Now we're gonna move on to budget and finance, and we're gonna try and hammer through these really quickly. There's gonna be a little background, so I'm gonna skip, I'm gonna go 3, and then 2, because we did talk a little bit, through my budget presentation. What are your current thoughts, what are your thoughts of the current unofficial bifurcation, core budget, funded
And that's
general
real, we don't wanna
revenue,
say,
and so
you know, we
technical
wanna say even
assistance,
think that
funded by external.
it's a busy,
The
like,
question with that
it's
is,
a whatever it is,
format.
we don't want that, 'cause we don't
It's
want
okay.
to have you.
The main question with that is, we've kind of,
Say, yeah, I
through
can't do it.
feedback from, some conversations we've had with the executive board, just through our own
That's
financial
important.
management, with staff have said, you know what, this technical assistance stuff is new. It's a real need or real value
One
that
of the
some
things
of
we
our
don't
members
do right
see,
now.
but it is not something that we've always planned funding, subsidizing event revenue for our general revenue.
But,
Let's keep these separate,
just to the
for the most
say,
part, and that, hey, if money comes in, great, we have a program that we can do.
These are the,
Not
on a weekly
supplementing
basis,
it
we
with
just
just our
our
general
general
revenue. And we found
Like,
out
of the
what happens
specifics
when
of what's in it,
money
not
gets
necessarily
pulled on that revenue.
subject matter, like this.
So
would be
the idea
great
that we
if
kind of had a
schedule,
schedule that we don't
we're gonna
always
do
want, we wouldn't want to get into a program that.
And we've already got you signed, that's great. Mayor Burton, yours is more, so we already know what's happening.
More of our money and resources into
This
it,
thing is
and then the
popped
state
up.
pulls the plug and we're left pulling back that our members of the life. So that's been our reasoning behind it. Are we comfortable with that, or is there okay, there's not a desire to
nightly funds.
At
our LPC.
Okay.
The numbers, like having a large.
Yeah, well, and that's why, and we're glad, we're happy, we've got $380,000 ongoing funding for LAA now. As ongoing gets, right? Because at any point, you can no longer. Okay, great. I'll make a note about that, that was a very easy question. And then finally, we did budget and finance. So Salt Palace is soon be undergoing renovation. And our ability to host the annual convention in Max 2027 is unclear. We very well could be able to say that we don't know what their renovation is going to look like. Our venue options are with a sufficiently sized exhibit hall are very limited. And ULCT conferences are currently funded approximately, like you saw, that approximately 50%
My favorite comments
are people like, and registration fees.
Wait, what?
So we kept that.
Where we get to the seventh.
We've seen our revenue.
And this is my one, right, we get to the last week LPC and someone's like, well, what about this? I'm like, we're talking about this for 5 weeks.
Year 27, we might need to be very limited on where we go, if we want to maintain the same type of footprint, maybe 50% corporate funding of this event. Or,
That's where everything's gonna be.
Exhibit halls, half funding goes away for that one. What are just our general thoughts on that? Should we think what it looks like, or?
No, we have to post it. I mean, I think we do it the right way.
Some of the, I think, and I could be, there could be more here, places that I think we are moving to with the size exhibit halls, Mountain America and Sandy. There's a venue in Ogden, a venue in Pro, although often doesn't work.
Then you place it the aquarium. Sure. And that is completely fair.
We can look, we can look, we're gonna look at it, Keating's been looking all over, we've got 2 places.
They can always do down.
When you're doing strategy, you can't say
In the big room.
but there are things that we can tell you what, that's a good.
And then you look at the shark.
Yeah.
Layton's on the list.
Just shifting it from where we are.
Says, while you're driving up.
Well, that is another, that is, you go to take over this.
At the same time, I'm gonna do a little bit of the video. There's never enough time to go that deep.
That is one of the venues.
And then if you have a story to go with, it's even better. You can't isolate just because someone here, 10, 30, or 90 years. As long as you know the 1 or 2 bullet points that happen. And that, I think, is a really comforting thing. Because I'll go into a meeting, I'll be honest, I go into a meeting with the Senate President, and I'm like, oh,
or even if we're out.
And then Cam looks at me like, Stella, you're up. And I've got my bullet point, and I'm like, and I say my 1 bullet point, and that's all I said. Do you just see it? That's all you want. And then I walk out like, well, that wasn't that big.
Yeah.
But the anticipation, yeah.
But it is a very fair
Some
point.
small kind of, potentially.
Yeah, when we live up there every day, this morning every day, we're swimming in the water, we forget what it's like.
Because it'll be more expensive.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Typically,
Yeah, Deer Valley's a great new place.
Yes, they do.
I watched.
The hotels are very, it's not the best.
So there are a lot,
So,
that's why.
in the, lots of,
That's why we
lots of
didn't have
potential places, are there thoughts of, hey, what if you tell our sponsors?
I wanna know too, just tell us, give us the tea.
Okay, so funding wise, we're looking at, we do want to keep that 0% on this corporate.
What if you like get creative about?
Oh, I got lots of switches. Yeah.
Time to move, time to move.
All right, okay, thank you guys. We're going that way?
We're going that way.
Clockwise, yes. Go to Molly.
You can get really creative. The exhibit hall, it doesn't have to be.
Well, actually, it's a quick one through, but actually.
Welcome.
Yeah, we'll see what I'm looking for that on Monday.
Which is great, because it's a
No, we talked about.
So if you have to, they were like,
Is this our whole group? Right here for us. No? No? Okay, great. Well, it's like, this guy's taking from engagement? Okay, great. The operations with Nick. We're gonna talk about 2 things you've seen this year.
Two main things we talked about are our operations committee, and then talk about 2 items from Monday, all through budget and finance.
I did,
So let's just go straight from the last guy in the packet on nominations committee. While our governing bylaws are quite general, nominations are limited, all of them rely on years of limited changes to the bylaws. The process is consistent, the intent is very up to date, a large number of annual applicants, provide more time and information to bid presentation, and stock committee has the website without the board.
Alright, so we're talking about.
Is anyone concerned about the nominations?
Is a menstrual.
No, I'm good, thank you.
No. Yes.
The mayor, you serve on the nominations.
Yes.
You have to. Okay. All right, well, you have to switch it back. Yeah, just 1 year break.
No, not
1 year break. So, we want your perspective, as nominated, but also.
It is important,
It is a vegetable committee, definitely here.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
So, our bylaws have not changed very much in 10 years.
Okay, is it
We used to have a term limit, and we could set back terms. We ran into issues with that, particularly in board areas where we don't get a ton of participation. We have someone who's a great board member, someone who wants to do it.
Sorry, Jessica. Hey, I'm meeting this now. But now we're talking about how many on. So one of the things we talked about is the last board meeting.
Each level, first class, second class, et cetera, in town, every board area, et cetera. We changed that to say, to consider geographic and size of the city. So we worked hard to make sure it does, it is representative of the entire city. But we're not trying to get members to serve on the committee, we're not locked into.
But we keep growing how many people are on.
So those are the real major changes to the bylaws themselves. The process itself, within the current bylaws, has shifted quite a bit.
2 minutes.
As I mentioned, all in person, anyone who applied, all in person interviews.
Oh, so you're gonna get it. Perfect. I knew that's where you're
More folks apply, that really wasn't working. So now that you're in the process.
All right.
Questionnaire.
Obviously, as a board, we only meet once.
Use those questionnaires, rank ability,
That's like
the members, and then
executive officers
anywhere
will
from,
meet
all the time, or a third.
On a third, we have a phone call, choose an hour and a half every Thursday.
We still have a whole ton of people in that group.
90 minutes.
So in person interviews day of, basically you talk an entire talking to officers that you registered for and want to attend. So we switched that to virtual interviews for those back on the day prior. Within that, also folks who aren't able to make that interview, virtual interviews, we were able to record an interview and have a video that we can.
Now, they're asking this, I'm not
asking the same questions. It worked out really well.
Should the, like,
And
should
then
the
we
board
do have the
meet
options to, on the day of, do any sort of second interviews.
Because if there's
decided
ways that
that
doesn't make
somebody
sense,
like to interview the second vice president folks, we can do that day of, a much smaller timeframe, and we're allowed to spend most of that day on deliberation, on who we are, what is that. So you can see, we've been able to shift and change the process, without actually making hard changes to the bylaws. With that background, I'd like to just open it up, and any, sort of feedback, either a nominee or a member of the committee, any thoughts that you have on how well we're doing, or what we need to change, or any other organizations maybe you've been a part of that have a different type of process that you can maybe,
Okay, so the foundation work is done, so we can go back and say, we can go back and say, Justin, it's already, this is done.
It's not in some years. So kind of a gut check on some of the stuff.
There's no effort needed to be put on this.
I remember.
Sure. Or to raise.
I could not.
Communities, raise up to that.
And I read through the entire thing.
And it's just a quick conversation with
And
sponsors.
so this last time, I think it was limited. It's all ones I saw.
Every single.
Sure, we allow for supplemental materials, folks would like to attach a resume or a photo, we ask for that. I do recall exactly what you're talking about, and we got like a 40-page, whole deal of everything you've ever done in your life, yeah. Which wasn't exactly helpful, right? But yeah, that's still, the way we have it opened up, that's still potential. Knowing what I know now, I might go back to that nominee and say, hey, they've got a lot of materials to review, you might want to.
He does, he knows all the bells anyway, he knows them all anyway.
Well,
you know, I said this.
Well, he knows the really important ones, most of them.
Unless you are like an amazing.
I'm just trying to figure out, it would be nice if you know.
I think that having done these smaller and then doing it online.
Subcommittee. Mayor and. So you already have that, you already lead on that.
The first time I interviewed the big person, the second time was on Zoom. And, I really liked the flexibility.
It's something that is near the
report because I
people
people had
involved in
another conference, and so I liked I thought that was a
Instead of
good
showing up on
thing
Monday
that
and
was
going.
for me. Be staff
So-
that said it.
Yeah, I actually thought it was a reason I think that.
Whether it's been.
Great.
Yeah, these guys are. So I think.
The phrase that Cam and I always say is, it's a good problem. He talks to executive directors of other state leagues where they are, state leagues where they are just begging people, please apply for the board, they can't get it. I wouldn't say we have too many at this point, that could be a problem, I think the many that we've had coming in, we've adjusted our process, and I think our process is good. And we want to see that. We want to see people, you know, they see value in the league and want to be on the board. When we have to tell them, hey, sorry, you didn't get it this time, but hey, make sure you're going to LPC, make sure you're, we want that level of engagement. So I don't, we're not quite to the point where we want to
Listen
say.
to everything else, but listen really closely to this.
Part.
You know, you're kind
We're
of
still
on
wanting
this.
to see it grow some, and just making sure we adjust to do it.
So if you do get that, consider not allowing self-nomination.
Yeah.
We like pounding on the table, yelling.
I guess there's.
And I was taking it till I'm
Yep.
ready to stop.
Yeah, that's a good point.
My legs are. I've had enough. And
Because all you really have to do there is, you know, if you really want to do it, is just ask somebody, right?
And everyone's like, hell no, vote this down. But I had the experience of laying where the executive branch was. I just wanted to get the neutral so we didn't get burned. I think it might be helpful if we were involved.
Great, any other thoughts about the
Those
process?
kinds of situations, so the board.
I'll also add, like, the reason we're kind of, someone mentioned this in the last group, like,
Kind of felt that
is there a
it knows
problem?
that.
Like, we're trying to fix something, is there something broken? And the answer really is no, I feel like we have, the one question we wanted to really get through is, are we good with keeping pretty good structure and general guidelines from the bylaws for being able to be flexible within those, like the changes that we made? Or do we need to lay everything out in bylaws? And then the reason we're doing this is because we've had, it's the exception, not the rule, we've had folks not get on the board, and be kind of upset about it, and ask, what is this process anyway? How did you even pick this number? What do you know, how does this thing work? We don't hear that from people that got on the board, and usually we don't from people, most of the people who didn't don't get on the board, take it with grace and apply again another year. Most people who are on the board don't get it the first time. Most people have had to apply multiple times to get on the board. They understand, they have a lot of great colleagues. That is the rule. But the exception is we do have some people who say, like, what is this even, what are you even doing here? Oh, what, the board picks their own? No, it's a separate entity, you know, like we do have board members on it, and we have non-board members as well. And we just want to make sure that the board feels that this process is a good process. There are improvements we can make to let people know how we're doing it. What, you know, we want to be able to make those improvements. Somebody brought up in the last group was, well, maybe we should just kind of explain the process a little better to the general membership, maybe create videos we show as we're soliciting nominations. Like, hey, here's how it works, just so people know. Just kind of head that off in the past, you know, so people aren't upset. I mean, nothing's going to change people getting upset today.
We were really close to having to cruise that.
That would have been.
I thought we were going to.
I understand why.
Yeah, you were ready.
Where we were.
Yeah, and I mean, we're a statewide organization. You know, I think not everyone can make it, it's a big state, and not only that, we understand that as board members, this is probably at least your SFPL CT board members, already got a city job, probably working another job.
That's what we could do.
Home, religious communities, all of those.
We could jump on and
You know, we know we're in a.
I say this knowing it's us, we're really bad at staying on time.
Like you said about the board meeting. Hey, here's our day of interviews. Oh my gosh, I can't make that day.
Probably.
We have over the years, and COVID really accelerated it, saying like, how can we make sure people. Small group. The schedules get out, and one geographic regions make it more difficult to be able to participate.
I don't think we need to staff for only two.
Yeah.
Do you, when you
connect with?
You just want to
Is Chad connected with the board member like a?
Or like an officer?
Well, yeah, if we get the officers in each officer.
We have a packet that we send out saying, hey, here's what we're looking for, but the other side of it is the nominations form that somebody can fill out. And then the one is just kind of very brief, one page, with very small margins, because we tried to keep it all on the one page, of, here are the expectations of a board member. I don't know of how much of that is, here's what we're looking for. I think some of it gets across, but we could maybe
Yeah, if you
emphasize
just
that a
find
little
out a
more.
little bit what you're looking for, so that people not only are motivated for the interview, but also understand why.
Availability
And I think it's kind of, yeah, and I think tagging onto that, letting people know there is such a location.
Well, you talk,
specific aspect
when
of
you talk
this,
about, kind of
that,
preliminary work.
like, I
one of the
think
things
there's
we'll
only
probably-
one board member, like cash, and Orange County. And so that's a different, like, that makes a big difference if I don't get.
When you talk about preliminary work, one of the things we don't necessarily have, is, we don't really have a list of like a matrix or anything. It's
So,
like,
just maybe a
board
geographic
member,
location.
expertise, or like good connections, you know? Like if it's realtors, I know I'm talking.
We have to have one person from every board.
But I don't necessarily know
We
that.
have to have two people from either first or
And I
second
don't necessarily know
class
who your
city.
friends are.
And we have to have one person.
Over the years, I get a pretty
Those
good
that
idea.
have
We get
that
board members, we get new
And,
legislators.
and they can overlap, so towns can also be an area representative.
You know, this council
And everyone
member,
else is kind of
this
at
topic,
large
or these
in general.
people.
We don't,
And I
and that's the other
like,
thing.
oh, I know one color right
We
now.
have two from area seven.
Yeah. And if you have more
area
resources,
seven
that's-
representative, and that person is at large. It's just that we
You're
have to
right.
have one box checked. So in our at large kind of areas, we have three people from area four.
Yeah,
and we
I knew that, yeah.
have four
I talked to
people
Steve all the
applying.
time. Actually, if.
The nominations
You're
committee will
I
look
talk
and be
to
like, we're pretty
That's
heavy in this area.
That's not even.
Probably-
And there's a lobby chest I talk to all the time.
Okay, we're about halfway through our time right here. We've got two more questions related to budget and finance. My experience with the other group.
And again, I guess what are
did
things
spend
that
more
we're
time on this, so we're
What
still looking good.
I just have one more thing.
Yep.
Here was,
Maybe.
if we want you to testify on something, we probably also need to spend some time as staff.
Yes.
Prepping you to testify. And that's a two-edged thing, because on the one hand, sometimes
Question before,
prepping you to testify takes longer than how you testify, right? But
So do you
the ROI is
someone who
such,
doesn't-
that's absolutely worth it.
Maybe try to act for you're going to be, right? Like that's one thing now, just make sure that everyone.
Like planning to make sure before.
It's important.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
100% bigger ROI than just.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Well, on behalf of the cities, this is what we feel.
Yeah.
And it kind of is
Mayor Walker
on
killed it this year.
the folks that we have are on our nominations committee, they like to see, people who.
Knocked out the park.
Because there's some great ones.
So, yeah, I mean-
Are participating with this, and, you know, having someone who's just like, kind of really cool. Put me in charge. Any other final thoughts on the nominations?
Just check
In general,
Just
have
check.
I pretty feel fair, feel like they're getting.
I have quotes that-
Good door out of it. Like term limit, we do not, and that's one thing we did used to have, we got rid of because, of the issues we had in certain rural areas where we had a great working relationship, still willing to serve, and no one else from the area has put their hand, so we did eliminate that. We have removed the casting out, now we have more of an informal, like, hey, should we consider this?
Or maybe just a recommendation for them in order to provide as many opportunities as possible, right? So, a lot of times I find out I want to our chamber.
I think that would be the consideration, like the interviewers, like, say, like, well, they had their chance, there's.
Well,
That's a really good point. I mean, I never really thought about that, but yeah, if we had a source of land, they would say, hey, you're a rest of sourcing for your land. Let's go figure this out, that's great. So we have that with some.
So maybe, so you're saying we have a board reform?
And I know that has been, and the second vice president has more than most of our job in the whole board. Is telling everyone they got on the board and telling everyone they didn't. And I know that has been a consideration in the past. Folks have said like, hey, we've done great. We just want to see. Okay, we're gonna move over to the budget and finance section, which we've broken up into two. And I'm gonna flip it from the way we have it in the program. We're gonna do question 3 first before we get to question 2. Because I talked a little bit about it in our budget, Q3 budget report. So what are your thoughts on the current unofficial bifurcation of a core budget funded by general revenue and facilitating technical assistance funded by external/additional?
You circle back and I'm pretty sure I'm for it.
The real background behind that is
what resource
state-funded technical assistance is relatively new. Things in the past few years that we've had the opportunity to take these grants from the state and provide really valuable assistance to
well, you vote on the budget, so.
And there's ideas out there.
We can make a circular thing there.
We do get to fund some of our core budget through that administrative fee that we pay a portion of. But we also run into, we've seen what happens when the state decides, hey, never mind, we don't want to. What we really want to do is just get a sense from the board. Is that kind of a bifurcation? Are we on board with that? That's something we've had conversations with the executive committee about that. From LAA was under fire. And just as a management decision that Cam and I made is, we've always funded these core services through dues and registration fees, et cetera. If we're going to do something new, we should be funded by something new. That's just kind of something, a decision we've made, but we haven't fully said, hey, board, is this kind of bifurcation something that you think we should do, or do you think we should have it be subsidizing some of these new programs with our own general revenue, which ultimately would lead to probably having to increase revenue from dues and from sources. So thoughts on the separation of the core budget and state technical assistance?
But we give them a storyline, so having that like ability to say that here's what I do.
My guess is each of the organizations will just wait for your
institutions to actually go down to the state house instead of yelling.
You know, that's actually really interesting, because I've never thought about, getting the, more of the local media sources. Because we talked to,
All they want to talk to myself, Margaret, and the mayor about that, are the only questions about legislation.
Sure. And that'd be an interesting thing. Because I used to, when I was the spokesperson for the Lieutenant Governor's office, I talked to media, all those things all the time. But during the session, we talked to, the big ones.
Well, the way, we have 2 minutes here, the way we do have it set up is currently we have candidates funded fully from the state and LA. And unless we found something else for her to do.
You just gotta know when you are,
That would be, we would do so. And a lot of these new programs that we're talking about wanting to do, we're gonna need top staff, right? So, but that would be that by not having our core staff plugged into all of these programs, and then all of these programs get wiped, our core staff.
I'm gonna look at the attorneys.
Finally, last thing in 2 minutes. The stock process is on the minutes, and before we do the whole thing, you can see it in, but some policies as they're going renovation. There we are limiting in the venues that we have, that have an exhibit.
Yeah, it's a core.
The core, what we showed in our budget report before is just over 50% of our conferences are funded essentially.
So if we got some smaller.
The question we want to run, we will get into, hey, what is it we should think about? We don't want to have form necessarily be like, oh, let's pick this one or that one, oh, this one's in my backyard, that sort of thing. But we do have a general question of, should we continue a model that we currently have where it's about 50% funded by the corporate sector? and deal with any limited, venue options that we may have. We very well could stay in this office, just don't know when the renovations. Or should we start rethinking, hey, maybe we need to raise registration fees, change what we're doing in the conference because we can't accommodate that, what our sponsors or do we just deal with the limited venues that we have?
And then they.
Right now is, you're saying
That's
what
good.
it's doing.
So, well, yes, I think the way we're doing it right now works. The issue is in 2027, Salt Palace is gonna go undergo renovation, and we don't have to go there. So there's a few places, there's one in Layton, there's one in Provo.
One of the things that-
there's one in Sandy, was thrown out, coming back down. We talked about this twice, because this space does, she doesn't want to. So we will just be limited in where we go. And they can do their renovation and say, oh yeah, half of it's still good, half of it's under renovation, you're still good to go there.
No, again, but
Or a small fish there, they could do that.
And it wouldn't be like, the actual work would not be in the
Then you know.
They would really have like a board that we call Yeah, we can give it names.
Just like our city manager said.
Right.
Working at
Time.
Smallville Park.
Might used to come at 10 because maybe it's something. And you don't have that time.
Yeah, and we have
flexibility.
Absolutely, yeah. And we haven't, we've kept those prices pretty consistent for the last 5 or so years. I don't know if we raised, we haven't been very successful. But we've seen the corporate sector grow.
Yeah, basically we'd all stand
Just not an
Excellent. All right, thank you all. Thank you so much.
Let's go, guys, you're always late, let's go, move.
Welcome to your last stop. How do you have? We got this extra one here, so. No, I had it right on here. Yeah. I bounce around, you can grab that.
Go for it. Keep it in short, guys. Here's the restroom. All right, here we Everyone ran to the restroom. This is happening. Everyone decided to be in the restroom. Yeah, actually. There, which is going loud.
Who else do we have in our?
Like one person has to go, and then everyone's like, I remember now, it's the third grade. You got some good horse things, just like in the third grade. Yeah, give me the lowdown.
Is that the face made in my handwriting or on the top? Because you can read that. Yep.
Everyone else.
Serial killer.
It's even worse. That's not the first time I've heard that.
Serial.
Well, yeah. All right, welcome to your last stop in this strategic discussion. With the most important discussion we have in vegetable. So we don't get a lot of time to talk about legislation, always after rules today, but we do want, you guys run this organization, so I want to hear everyone.
Microphone.
A couple of key points. So number one is nominations committee. Everyone's been through it, at least as a nominee, and we've had a few serve on the committee. Kate has, Jessica has, right? Been on the nominations committee? Yeah, anyone else been on the nominations committee? Okay, well, we want to get your input as nominees, right, everyone has on the other side. Well, you told yes a lot too, you're here. So, we want to get your perspective as a nominee, and for those who have served on the committee, just kind of your experience as someone on the committee as well. I'll give you the quick background on it, is that we have not made a lot of hard changes to our bylaws. There have been a couple of changes to our nominations bylaws, and those bylaws are in your board packet, that we made as part of our. And the only changes there were we eliminated term limits, we said you couldn't serve back-to-back terms. When we run into an issue there in a couple of the areas, we have a little lower participation, we've had good board members, and we wanted to make sure that they could continue to serve if they wanted. And then we eliminated the hard requirements of you need one member from a first class city, second class city, serve on the towns, one from each board area. We changed that to say to consider geographic size in order to have this first election. Those are the only hard changes we made in the bylaws. However, the committee and how the committee operates has changed quite a bit over the last few years. COVID was part of it. And you just don't know. We used to run as a full day event of everyone who was nominated, did an in-person interview in front of the nominations committee. Pretty much took up a full first day of the conference. Since then, we've had more and more people apply. So we've shifted into folks fill out a questionnaire. They submit it all. The nominations committee reviews those questionnaires, ranks them, cuts that down by half to 2/3 of that group. Moves on to an interview. Then at one point we did all in-person interviews for those. We shifted that to do all virtual interviews for that whole group. And then potentially one second interviews, or we're doing in-person interviews or second interviews. So the nominations committee went from the day, all day, to 3 different meetings discussing after they've discussing their survey results and filling down the list, doing virtual interviews, and then one day at the convention dedicated to pure deliberation and voting. All of those shifts have happened within the same framework of that bylaws. So the first question we kind of want to ask is, do we think it's fine? Do we like that we have direction going bylaws with flexibility to work within to adapt as the situation changes? We asked attendees, how much do we want to ratchet down our bylaws to make sure we have everything? It's a vegetable flexibility.
Yes,
we like to hear that.
Wow.
We want to make sure,
yeah, very healthy. Alexa, you're
we just want to hear overall experience. Things we think we can improve, things that we like, we want to make sure we hang on to no matter what, or things we think we can change.
Right though.
The general topics.
No, see, that's a definitely, not just like you guys, like, definitely a snack. I'm very confident there. All right, but what we're actually talking about. So at the last board meeting, we talked about, are there things we can do more with the board to help the legislative affairs during
a lot to get everyone.
We have our first board meeting at the first session on the second official day, and then the board just sort of holds back in advance. We don't really do anything different with the board. We use the executive officers. We meet with them once or twice a week. We talk to them all the time. Prior years, we used to have a weekly meeting with the governor's office.
Virtual events, the ranking to virtual, reduction to having something face.
No offense to the governor's office.
I thought it was actually really good.
But the question came up, are there things that we can do more now? Now, I want to be clear, we're not asking like aspirationally, should you all come to the Capitol for a session? No. And do nothing else. But are there things legitimately that as board
last year was
like
much better.
we done more, we can do like more
There's places we're not using. It's all virtual. And the day of was delicious. Some of the feedback we've heard from folks who went through that process this year, like, so for the virtual interviews, we had time slots and they were live virtual interviews. There were 2 or 3 folks who couldn't make that day work. And so, Krista, who was chairing it at the time, Krista and I did Zoom meetings with them, recorded them, and essentially did a recorded interview that we could play for the full committee. So we did more questions. And it wasn't the same as,
So we sent out the action.
in-person interviews for everyone in text, so it felt a little more on par.
And you can kind of double
As
that
follow
and
up,
say, hey,
it was a little more on par.
this is serious, we really need to.
I had that happen, and that's the one I was in public education.
No, I would say from a staff perspective, yeah, well, from a staff perspective, we want to affirm that. We want to make sure that since we have shifted year over year, that we are still going in a good direction. The other thing we want to ensure is this is the exception, not the rule, but sometimes when folks don't get.
Yeah, that's what I did,
They're a little upset.
And really, we're trying
and have questions about the process. And we want to make sure that
we sent out the action alert, it's a big
process,
deal.
the process,
I think
the process.
there were years when we
As
sent
we
out
go
too
back
many
and
action
spend
alerts.
Because, I mean, honestly,
If we're like, we're forcing this out, we're serious.
I've always been a consultation.
So yeah, the reality, yeah.
But they've been staff ideas and staff driven, and we try to accommodate how many folks we have in. And we don't want to get too far ahead of our skis as staff being like, okay, yeah, we've shaped this process without.
This bill is this committee, if you could come.
Oh, last year
I
I
think that will help educate us more with.
But the process, the documentation I got as somebody.
Entirely behind and how things are going down, or,
you do this, you do this, you do this, but had I not been through it
or
before, I don't
even
know.
like what other boards.
Not
So
enough
it could be a
explanation
matter of adding
process.
some clarity to our own website as people. I would say
Sure.
there's
Yeah.
it becomes more transparent. So probably an infographic about.
Sure.
Process.
And so I think those invitations,
Should be more general.
this is going on,
This happens
because we,
10 days later.
you know, we're obviously trying to be like city,
Yeah.
families, everything.
Yeah.
But
The website's right
simple
there.
invitations could really,
Oh,
just get us more involved.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because, I mean, one of the things I think about is the water task force meets like once a month. And I go to it or tune into it, but I've never once thought, you know what, there's probably a board member could listen into it, so it's online, and get up to speed on water. Never even crossed my mind, so I like that. That's awesome.
To shadow.
Sure.
I agree with that, and also the fact that you don't have staff, that you're not paid.
I've been really happy when people,
I think some
the actual work
some
says you
like, we collectively, you know,
seek
not.
advice, ask for feedback.
Talking points, things, yeah.
And stay engaged.
And I'm just thinking about, you know,
And then we all do
and
elevate you, so
they
we're
don't
not
have
really
the
liability.
liability.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
that,
Yep, yeah.
And that's,
And-
and that's, but, I just think at the airport, right?
You know,
How
access my,
or just some, it doesn't have to be infographic, but like
this
something.
is
These are legal, sometimes it's like there's circles on the cost of secondary damage control, that like circle is supposed to be like, like things that had to have cost of their county and their county.
And so I felt, you know, to provide those options, and I did some research, these were all the ones that have, and how it's like,
Like it takes a lot of time to go.
Yeah. And one thing we try to get across to folks is usually Sam follows up with everyone after, and we think about that, it's more like, it would be much easier on the second vice president to assign it to me to tell everyone, right? But the message should be delivered by a peer, another elected official who is on the board. But then Cam follows up.
I think, like, sometimes easy because they're having to have, you know, that we don't need to, and the hard part was this, the people who are doing that makes us, I hate to leave that out, we're gonna drop our views.
You're giving Ted that time. I gave him a hard time because he gave me 9 the last 2 times. I'm like, yeah, tonight's a weird one.
But that is the exception, not the rule, I feel. Like, there's this thing that you, for every, one negative comment you hear, you have to hear 5 positive comments in order to kind of like, give your brain, yeah. You know, we all have different levels of that.
Isn't that confirmed to be right?
Sometimes it does.
Nick, I'm one that has no opinion about it, because I've not been, and I'm not going to say it. I'm wondering, do you limit applications? So, when you're identifying that we've got 2 from St. Utah County, we don't want 2 more. We can't have, we shouldn't have.
Yeah, and I think that's spot on. We really don't have like a matrix anywhere that says, you know, mayor expertise or relationships, you know. Like, I don't know if your good friends are in the legislature, if you don't have any, but if you're like, oh yeah, I guess what, so-and-so, we went to college together. Like, why are I having you call them? You know, even, perhaps even more than the local mayor. That may be the cost of entry. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So that one, yeah, I think we definitely need some kind of list. It's like if you're on the board, you know, areas of expertise, the relationships you have.
And areas of interest.
And areas of interest, yeah.
What do you want, and we thought we could do to address that, is to say more clearly what representation we need and what it looks like on a map, so people understand the implications. So when you have 2 from Sandy who are serving simultaneously.
No, I'm sure.
The midfield.
I'm sure we have so much untapped expertise in that area.
So when you have a bunch of people in the same space show up, I can't say.
3 of them say untapped.
I just think that's we need more maps, right? Where maps are. We should pull that out. Here's the red area we need to.
It's right here.
Yeah. So, is if we ask you, hey, when you get up and test on a bill, what is your comfort level on testifying in front of the legislature?
Is there a foot or algorithm?
It is a different arena than, you know, being at a city council meeting, running for 100 days,
Get it, but,
so.
Southern Utah, you see my name over here in Wayne.
That's right, we got you quick. We didn't even hesitate. But yeah, I mean, so I guess to that, are there things you wish we would have given you more training, more expertise, more, here's what to expect?
But I'm not sure that's very transparent to everybody.
And it is hard to explain. Because we need to have one from every board area, and we need to have town. And town representative can also be in there. And then we need 2 folks from either the first or second class that cannot double up as other areas. But there is no, hey, you're the area board representative, and someone else is the area board representative. There's no.
And maybe there's a little bit of.
I don't know if structurally.
Please be more familiar with the
Maybe, again, I'm just spitballing first time. I'm throwing out ideas same here. But yeah, I mean, maybe, you know, we usually call you when it's a big deal, like, man, we really need you on this one, no pressure, but it's a huge deal. And maybe we do need to make sure, you know, practicing earlier on. There's plenty of testimony where we get up and we joke at like football play calls, like, I need to get up and do a number 8, like, and I've done this one 5 times this week. But you get used to it and you do it.
And you both check.
But when we call you up and we say, hey, this is a huge deal, can you go to the next box? That's a your town box. So if you've got to go to your ballot box in here, when it is the big one, that may.
So if one of you were to go, we'd still have, well, we have 2 and we also have 2 area 6s. So either one of you could go and our board representation would still be fine.
Okay.
But both of you couldn't go. Or else we need a town representative. It gets a little convoluted, yeah. But we do need to move on to the other question. Actually, what are our final thoughts on nominations?
Last year. I love that idea, and I never even thought of that. When we think, you know, and we need to get the press, you know, our mics usually go to, you know, the Trib, the Des News, and, you know, KSL and whatever. Fox 13, I'm gonna go grab Ben Winslow. But we're hoping in local media and getting local spin and then watching that follow me. Also, that's happening all the time. Is, yeah, it starts someplace and goes somewhere else, so.
Well, we don't have, but there is no method for like forcing cities, right? But no, I mean, that is really a good way to put it, because we can. I don't know of a nominations committee that would say, yeah, let's put all of the people that we want in, but let's have 2 candidates. Good times, yeah.
Yeah, they're looking for stories, right? Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that, that's great. I used to see it when I was in the. Yeah, press reach out to me like every day and say, I want to write something, what should I write about? And you're like, it seems like a weird question, but they do, they're looking for stories and they need it.
And a representative from government will be able to look for.
And I tried to write it, like, you know, I spent more time up here this year.
So my summary, TLDR, all this will be I think the process of nominating somebody before you love the chances.
Just
I'm sure a nominee itself probably.
You know, I had no idea people sat in the middle of the sat outside the house chamber. I was just waiting for, you know, the panel, right? But
And the other thing I've got from folks is, we can maybe explain it a little better. Explain the process. The process is good, explain it a little better for folks, but overall, the board is in on the process. Because those changes that you're talking about, Councilman Radford, would be constitutional changes, which have to happen in convention, be larger, something the board itself couldn't do, but it's something that's kind of.
And, you know, like, and changes, but still do personal invite.
And we wanna look at everything, right? Like, are these the right areas? You wanna look at, you're gonna make that level of change.
Well, I think that the role that you have is actually a really appropriate time to be looking at where growth is happening. How many people first.
Yeah, here's almost anything.
Whatever it
Just to
is.
see how it
Okay.
works.
Cam is gonna tell me we have 2 minutes
No, like I
left.
said, I don't
have anything to flash before we're gonna go. So, we talked a little bit about this on the safety number 3, if you're looking at your agenda. We talked a little bit about this in my Q3 budget presentation, is this idea of a core budget funded by dues, registration fees, general revenue, and then this relatively new state-funded technical assistance we have coming in. We've had conversations with previous executive board about this kind of bifurcation. Pam and I have decided internally, everything is fine, that's what makes sense. We don't know what's coming in and out of the state. Let's keep what's new. It only is a benefit, it is a huge benefit for a certain amount of our members. Essentially, we don't want dues subsidizing these kind of new policies. We just want to make sure we're on the right track to support that this bifurcation of state-funded technical assistance kind of being its own thing, and not necessarily state.
And they can see what it is.
Corporate grants, that would fund these specific programs. We are to 2 minutes. And not subsidizing those like dues or event revenue and that sort of thing. Are we on the right track there, or is there a desire to have dues funding these sorts of things?
I like that.
What kind of resources we have? That's what we're trying to figure out. I'm committing to nothing right now. This is me not committing to anything. We're gathering all the feedback and then I'll let you know. I'll tell you the things. The press cycle I really like, because we talk about this all the time, about getting stuff in the press.
There was a question that Molly was asking,
across my mind.
that we need feedback on, but I feel like they're very connected.
Yeah, planting stories locally is an awesome idea.
Perhaps
About the whole region of
cities
like 25
that don't use, for example,
We could drop that all over the place.
Like that.
Crazy.
I don't know if this is in the confines of what you're talking about, but what about, we talked about.
Yeah, everybody here. So she got it.
Also, rocket. I mean, like,
Yeah.
Sorry, was I supposed to?
Yeah,
was like, were the right hands, the fingers in the right place?
Okay, final question.
Absolutely.
We are, Salt Palace is going under renovations in 2027. We don't know what that's gonna look like.
My son.
Yes, we very well could stay at Salt Palace, but we very well could be booted out and be looking for other venues. Also mentioned in the Q3 budget report.
We will.
Half of our event revenue is funded by the corporate sector, by that exhibit hall, whether it's sponsors or exhibitors. We are even more limited in the venue options we have. We're looking for an exhibit hall that will support the current situation. The main question we have for everyone is, we think our whole model around corporate sponsorship funding about half of our events and size of the events, and registration fees, relying more on that. Or do we accept that we are limited, are going to be limited to spaces that we have to? We're not talking about specific spaces at this point. And we know that would accommodate us, includes coming back to say so space. Mount Merrick, Sandy, there's one in Lakewood, there's one in Provo.
Listen to everything else, but really,
we're gonna look at some other options, but
this week was a committee.
might not be big enough. But that's the question. The main question as far as it relates to budget is, do we keep the model we have now where the corporate sector is funding like a little over half of our events, or do we rethink that in order to expand our options?
Like briefing
And so it was like.
We do.
I used to go to a really small municipal palace, so I always feel like we're supposed to three other conventions simultaneously, so I would be very supportive of that.
We do. I think what we need to do, what I hear is though.
Bring it back, keep it in the hole.
Because I do think that.
Yeah, right.
And then I would, rather than trying to like juggle all of these up.
But yeah, so look, again, I'm not going to say, I think so, like.
I think the model
is like you all. There was tax, yeah. Yep.
I love how that works.
Yeah, and we've done a few, right? Rally bits, we did the R, we've done a lot, tops, we've done a lot of it. But if we had.
I don't miss it. I love it, but I don't miss it.
It was cool to see this iteration of Beach Boys.
No, it never was, but.
Guess what? I actually need to.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's fine, but nothing on awesome feedback.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring it back.
As soon as I walked out of that, said, that wasn't funny at all. You are not aware of how close.
Good. All right. Great. Thank you so much. We're pulling it back together at the table. I think most of these can go right to here, so I'm not sure. Everyone's coming from clear across the room.
I do. I have that. I got you also.
So I was supposed to go down there.
I've got another one. So much.
Okay, so bring everyone back to, committee of the whole for before we move on to our dinner.
Situation like this.
All right.
Yes, how I feel.
Okay, we're moving back for 2 minutes, committee in the whole. Please note that Mayor Walker has moved his cap backwards, which means we really only have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you everybody for that discussion. As I was meandering and listening, there were a lot of great perspectives that I hadn't considered before as I listened to the group, so I'm really excited to hear the reports back from Nick, Justin, and Molly. Thanks to the three of them for their preparation and facilitating that discussion. We'll be going through all of the comments as a staff, and then that'll help inform what we bring back to you. That could be bylaw changes, that could be part of the budget, and other pieces. Inevitably, whenever we do these small group meetings, every mid-year conference, I have a board member grab me in the hallway and say, I just thought of this, and that is great. So in the next couple of days, while you're immersed in city business and the league world, if ideas come to you that you wish you brought up this afternoon, please tell the staff over the next couple of weeks. If ideas come, email us, text us, This is why we do it. Jared, did you come in? Great. Jared's got an update on the amicus stuff just from the last hour.
That was worth every billable hour.
So I talked to UAC. UAC has partnered with USIP, the Utah Indemnity Pool, and they will be the ones that will be drafting the amicus. And they are waiting on the principal brief of Salt Lake City to be finished and filed before that's just the process, before they can actually file the amicus. So they are waiting on the principal brief to be filed before. So I have informed them that we want time, and if they want our sign on, then they are going to have to get us that amicus before the upcoming board meeting. So that's where we're at with that.
Thank you for that update.
Yep. Thank you, Jared, for jumping on that right away. Okay, a couple just other business items. We have at least 176 first-time attendees. That's the number who signed up that this was their first time. But who knows if that's actually the good what?
That's a third.
Yes, exactly. So you just spent some time talking about your duties as board members. Here's my ask. Help everyone who comes through the conference feel welcome. And
They need to get us a hat to wear.
right. So it's possible that they'll have the tag that says they're a first-time attendee. We're doing tomorrow morning at, tomorrow's Thursday, right? Yeah, 7:30 is the newly elected breakfast, and several of us will be there to answer questions and chat with them. But please make friends while you're here, because even if they're not a first-time attendee, if it's the first time you've talked to them, we want to make sure they feel welcome. And with you having tax and you're a board member, it's a great opportunity to make sure that they know that they're important, and we appreciate them being here at the conference. During the Thursday morning general session tomorrow, Mayor Grouch has want to acknowledge the board and have board member stand, so please make sure you're in there for that. That's the Greg Jackson keynote. And then please make time to fill out the QR code about why we love America. We're going to be doing it as staff as well, because we want people to follow our lead. Everybody's always anxious to be the first person to do it, but if they see that there are already 20 comments in there, it's going to populate as it goes along. That'll be awesome. Then with some, we can report back to the full membership over the next few weeks. With that, that's my executive director report. Thanks everybody for being here in St. George, and I'll let you announce. Do you want me to announce dinner?
Cameron, can we get that QR code back?
Yes. Yeah. You pull the QR code back up. So I'll announce dinner while we pull that back up. Dinner tonight begins at 5:30 at the Cliffside Restaurant, which is up on Tech Ridge here in St. George. Again, that's at 5:30. Now, we know that some of you have dinners with your council or with other people, and that's great. We want to make sure that every board member has somewhere to be. We ask, if you can, to at least stop by and say hi to folks in the board dinner. If you can, eat 2 dinners, or at least pop in, mingle for a little bit, and then go visit with your councils, because ultimately we want you to have an enjoyable time while you're down here. So thank you for your time. Thank you for taking time away from families and work and city life and jobs and everything else to join us. Let's have a great couple of days.
No, Mayor Palmer, it's a Lord of the Rings thing to have 2 meals. It's a Hobbit thing. So I know that Lord of the Rings has been something you've been still learning about this year, so.
Second breakfast.
Second breakfast, this is second dinner.
This is a Hobbit thing, it isn't?
I'm gonna have 2
I
dinners.
cannot wait till we're done with this.
It's never going to end.
It's never gonna end. I can assure that Krista isn't gonna end for it. By the way, we're gonna excuse Councilmember Hinton. Santa Clara has city council meeting tonight, so that's where she heads off to. So with that, hopefully we will see y'all for at least a short time, if not the full time, at the dinner at 5:30, and then bright and early tomorrow morning, wearing our hats.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.